the infamous and drawn Grünfeld line. This is the line which was opted by many strong super GMs and now has become famous for its quick draw tendency. By the 25th move, there is a perpetual check from white which ensures a draw. The latest game being between Mamedyarov and against Girianish in the penultimate round of the SuperBet Chess Classic. And Mamedyarov had needed to not lose the game, so this was the safest way for him. So let's see how this Grunfeld line starts. d4, knight f6, knight f3, g6, c4, bishop g7, knight c3. So, and d5. And this is the Grunfeld. It also kind of transposes into the same move order by g6, knight f3, bishop g7, knight c3 now, with playing c4 straight away, or knight f3 first. And now d5. If it's d6, it kind of transposes into a King's Indian defense setup. But Grunfeld, d5. So d5, cd5, knight d5, e4, and knight takes c3. It's the more well-known option. Knight b6 is another option, but the black knight on b6 is not going to be doing anything, as it cannot come to a4 or c4 or d5. And the only way for the black knight to activate himself is going back to d7. So black accepts the challenge of e4 and takes on c3. B takes c3, and okay, white has got a very good center control. It's controlling all of the center, but black doesn't. So what does black have? Well, he has the breakthrough move of c5, trying to break into the center using his two bishops, which are going to be fianchettoed, aiming right at the center pawns. Rook to b1, which is the most common move. Some other theoretical continuations are bishop b5 check, bishop e2, bishop e3. But in the game, rook b1 was played. Castle and bishop to e2. The bishop doesn't really want to go to c4 because there are quite a lot of possibilities of a6, b5 coming where the bishop would have to retreat back. So white just saves that tempo by playing bishop e2. C takes d4, c takes g4, queen a5 check, and now white has a choice. Should he play queen d2 and go into a drawn endgame with multi-pieces, or should he play bishop d2, a more dynamic option, and giving black the pawn? Let's see both. If queen d2, it goes straight into a drawn endgame. After queen d2, bishop d2, b6, castle, bishop b7, and d5. So what was the point of bishop b7? Well, black wants to create some weaknesses for him to attack later. Because how can he defend the c4 pawn? The only good way looks d5, because bishop d3 just puts a bishop in front of a pawn, which is not going to be that good. d5, and now black just plays bishop a6, trading the bishops. Bishop takes, knight takes, bishop e3. And pros and cons for each side. White has better center control, but his pieces don't have really good squares to look forward to. On the other hand, black does not have center control at all, but black also has rook c8, rook c2 coming, and he has better piece control. So it is very unbalanced, this position, and though it most likely goes into a roughly drawn endgame. Another option is, of course, to play bishop to d2. And here, white is aiming for center control and better placed pieces, and lots of open files for that pawn deficit. The A file is his, the B file, and the C file. And on the other hand, black's pieces are not doing that much at all right now. And queen takes A2 was played. Castle, bishop to G4. And rook takes B7. Not played very often, and it tends to be a bit drawish even after this bishop d2 dynamic option. Because after rook b7, black plays bishop takes f3. We will look at this later. But the more common move is bishop to g5, where the line continues h6 and bishop e3, provoking weaknesses in black's camp. So what was the idea? So that now h6 is attackable after queen d2 or queen c1 and bishop takes h6. After knight c6, d5, knight e5 and bishop c5, knight a5 and bishop c5, and white again aims to attack e7 and attack the weaknesses in black's camp. Note that bishop takes e7 is not best because of rook e8. Rook takes b7 and knight c6. Bishop c5, rook takes c4. And black suddenly gets lots of compensation. His pieces are suddenly very active. The rook on e4 attacking e2. White has to decide where the bishop has to go. And bishop d3. And a game between Kramnik and Kasparov saw in this position rook takes d4, sacrificing the exchange. But after knight takes d4, bishop e4, rook d8, queen b1, knight e2 check, king h1, queen c4, bishop takes g6, a very nice move. Because if f takes g6, then queen takes g6 and queen takes g7 or queen takes g4 is unstoppable. I'll show it to you right now. Knight c3, bishop takes f7 check, queen takes, rook takes, knight takes b1, rook takes a7, knight c3, h3, and a draw was accepted here. White has rook and 2 pawns for the bishop and knight, but it will be a draw most likely. See, the draw is tendency. Bishop to g5 was the option, the better option, and the more commonly known one. But in this line, white plays rook takes b7. And now, bishop takes f3. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes d4, and e5. So white is again sacrificing the pawn, but why is he doing so? And that is my first question to you. What move is the best for black here? What is white's idea? And finally, what should black do to prevent it? Pause the video if you need to. Sorry, this is the better one. And here, knight a6 is certainly the best move because it's right now freeing the rook from its congested home on a8. But let's see why others don't work. If bishop takes e5, well now rook takes e7 and the bishop on e5 and the rook on a8 is under attack and it's game over simply. If queen to e6, well now simply queen a4, a very nice move, and black is actually in a tight spot as neither the knight or the rook can move. And next move, the rook moves somewhere, the white rook, and the black rook will be under attack. And why not rook d8 finally? Well now rook c7 is possible. If knight a6 and rook c2, and white has this resource up his sleeve and white wins because once the queen moves, the black rook on a8 is gone. So that's why knight to a6 is certainly the best. Knight a6, rook takes e7, and now, again, your move. How should black continue? White is attacking the black rook, so where should it move? Rook a c8, rook a e8, rook a d8, or rook a b8. Pause the video if you need to. Well, here, the best move is rook a d8. But why not the other moves? Well, because if rook a b8, then simply rook to d7, attacking the bishop on d4. After bishop takes e5, bishop h6, attacking the black rook on f8. Rook fe8, well now bishop to d5. And the f7 pawn has to depart, or the queen, and black's position will crumble. So rook a b8 is not working. Well, why not rook a c8? This time, bishop h6 straight away, rook f d8, e6, and white gets a strong attack coming. After f takes e6, well, rook e8 check, brilliantly. After rook takes e8, queen takes d4, and white's threat of queen g7 is almost unstoppable. If black tries rook c7, well, now all the pieces of white come in the attack. Bishop to c6, attacking the black rook on e8, and of course the black rook cannot take on c6 as well. So what should black play now? He might try e5, but now simply queen d6. Again, this black rook is attacked. Though it is defended by the knight, this black rook is also attacked, and queen f6 is also going to be played. Bishop d5, winning the queen, and white is completely winning. And well, the last option, why not rook e8? This seems again quite obvious, rook d7. Bishop takes e5, bishop to h6. Well, okay, black plays bishop to g7, blocking it. Is everything okay? Well, no. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, queen d4, king g8, bishop d5. And white is clearly winning, because wherever the black queen moves, white queen comes to f6, and it's going to attack f7, and 3 pieces attacking f7, and none of the black pieces can do anything to stop that. A sample variation may go queen c2, well, queen f6. How do you defend f7? You can't. And that's why only best move is rook 8 d8. But why? Why doesn't again bishop h6 work? Because bishop h6 and now bishop takes f2 check. And this is a move which black has now, because the queen is on break. So rook a d8 and e6. Again, trying the same idea. F takes e6 and queen to e1. So just getting out of the way and attacking e6 as well. Knight to c5. And this has been played 6 times, and this is the main infamous drawn line. Another game which had continued in roughly the same position was bishop to f6 here. This was between Ristic and Vasher Lagrave in the last tournament, SuperBet Chess Classic 2021. And after bishop f6, a draw had happened. The drawish tendency. Rook takes d2, rook takes a6, queen takes a6, queen takes d2, queen b6, g3, bishop d4, queen e2, rook f6, king g2, queen b2, queen takes b2, bishop takes b2, and this game quickly fizzled out into a draw, going into bare kings. So queen e1, and now knight to c5. And here there are 2 options for white. White can either play bishop e3 or bishop c3, but both transpose into the same line. Because after, let's say, bishop c3, black plays knight d3, attacking the white queen. So what should he do? Well, we don't even move the white queen. We play bishop takes d4. And after knight takes e1, and the perpetual check is seen. Rook g7, king h8. Rook d7, king g8. Rook g7, king h8. Rook d7, king g8, rook g7 check, and this infamous drawn line. Why rook d7 check? Because anywhere else, so here, anywhere else, let's say rook takes a7 check, trying to win the queen. Well, after rook takes d4, rook takes a2, black has simply knight takes f3. G takes f3, rook takes f3. Black will be a pawn up, and though this will go into a draw, it's much easier for white to just play rook g7 check. And why not any other possibility, like rook c7? Because simply rook takes d4, so this bishop is under attack as well. So rook d7 just blocks that rook. And this is the infamous drawn line which I was talking about in the recent tournament. And this has been opted by So Wesley 4 times, not just in the SuperBet Chess Classic, as white and Mamedyarov and Rajabov have also played this before. And all the 6 games have been So Wesley versus Nepomniachtchi in Airthings Masters. Then again in So Wesley versus Ian Nepomniachtchi in FTX Crypto Cup, So Wesley versus Girianish, So Wesley versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and the last two games, Mamedyarov Shakhriyar versus Girianish and Temur Rajabov versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, both happened in the SuperBet Chess Classic. And so this is it. This was the drawn line, which has occurred many times now. After the first time, which was occurring between So Wesley and Ian Nepomniachtchi. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you. Bye.